Welcome to Real Wealth Podcast. This is Mike Proctor here with Mark Hutton. He is a legend here in the Wichita market with one of the largest construction companies in the Midwest, or one of the larger ones, right?
Yes.
I'm not exactly sure how far you stack up, but it is certainly one of the larger ones, right?
We do okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and how many states are you covering today?
Oh, gosh, let's see. We're central United States, Texas, all the way up to, we've done work up in South Dakota, front range of Denver, all the way into Missouri and the like. So kind of that swath, primarily Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska are our primary markets.
Yeah, and you've got a fancy new building not too far from here.
Yeah, yeah.
It looks beautiful.
Yeah, it's all my son's doing. He runs the day-to-day now and pays me to stay out of the way. So,
hey, that is something to aspire to.
It actually works pretty good.
Yeah.
For me, at least. I don't know about him, but
yeah, and there's so many that wind up in their parents' basements, and he's trying to pay you to stay away. That's, what a blessing.
Yeah, it is.
Anyways, so this podcast is sponsored by Leading Edge Financial Planning, where we help people make wise financial decisions. And as far as Mark's background, he's done everything from run for Kansas governor to be his only employee to start it out and grow it up to around 300 or so. He has been very involved around town with philanthropic efforts, serving on boards, and it seems like maybe you're even more busy in retirement than quasi-retirement.
Yeah, I mean, I define retirement as getting to do primarily what you like to do when you want to do it.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I have that freedom. And so I'm blessed by that. And it does give me a chance to give back.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I look forward to being able to grow more and more into that kind of a being, to focus on giving back every day. And sometimes it happens through work, and sometimes it just happens through time and money and effort and caring for people.
Yes, it does. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. So back to the focus of the podcast. A couple of main lenses we look at are how you live in the best life possible, and that looks different for everybody. But it usually is pretty simple. It's like, okay, what's fulfilling? And so I'm always curious to learn more about as folks have grown, as they've been through a lot of experience, what helps to live the best life possible. So maybe that's a good place for us to start, is just jump right into that one, go for the big question.
Yeah. Well, like I think everybody, especially as you get older, you find out that you're a continual work in progress on how you live your life and what you want out of that. Obviously, when you're young, your goals are to succeed in things. I chose to start a business when I was 38 years old. My goal there, I told people I left another company, and my success benchmark was if I could make as much money as they spent on postage in a year, I'd be happy. We screamed by that and really never looked back. But as it's so easy for people to define success through financial means. I mean, that's really kind of the benchmark that everybody uses. But for me, as I've evolved in life, it's, success is really defined with, how did I improve? Did I come out of that experience a better person, and or at least learn something that would make me a better person out of that? And I found that to be a much more satisfying benchmark to decide against, was that a worthwhile endeavor or not? Or is this worth my time to invest today as I turn 4 in life and start looking towards that finish line? You weigh your time that you have left against what you can, benefit people out of. So that's really kind of my guiding principle is, how can I make other people's lives better, and how can I improve mine? Not financially, but just, what I learned, and am I a better person for coming out of it?
case in point, coming on the podcast to share a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do that. I enjoy sharing my life experiences. I spend time with various young men that I mentor and kind of just, I don't really do a formal mentoring deal where we read books and talk about
Sure.
that. It's just usually a discussion around where they're at in life, and I offer my perspective on what I learned during that season in my career or my life or my marriage or raising my kids. I mean, just what you find more than anything is that people are going, well, yeah, I feel the same way, and so that's the value of friendships, is that people learn that they're not alone in their trials.
And that gets down to the core of being human and being with people and
Yep,
coming alongside. And
absolutely.
yeah, before we got on, we were talking about Ray Frederick, and he and I enjoyed a relationship that for a while, and I'm sure that soon we'll start that back up.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, Ray's a tremendous leader. We were saying he serves on the Technical Education Authority Board and has for years, and has really diligently worked to shape our technical education offerings in the state of Kansas, and they wouldn't be as good as they are today if Ed hadn't invested in those. And so I think the state needs to be very grateful for his service there.
Yeah, I'm sure they are.
And I'm sure if you know Ray, that you got the morning emails that said, "I'm praying for you."
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
I started getting those when I was in the legislature, and was just a real joy to read those scriptures that he sent every morning, and just knowing that there really was somebody out there that didn't want anything from you, that was praying for you. There's two different things.
It is. Yeah, no, I am appreciative for men like him, and yeah, I know that I'm a better person for it, and I'm sure you are too. So
Absolutely.
So how was it transitioning from a business owner to a politician?
Yeah. Well, I think I'd start with, how I got there first.
Okay.
It all really started, I was, just really convicted that one day in church, God said, I've given you all this stuff. What are you going to do with it? Are you just going to enjoy it and kick back, or are you're going to leverage it like the tail of the talons, and don't bury your blessings in the backyard? And so that, I started talking about what's my higher calling, and where that's going to take me. And that somewhat coincided with my son Ben's development, and to the point that he walked in my office one day. I think he was 28 years old, and he says, "I'm ready to run this company."
Hey.
And I said, well, I'd given him a list of things he had to do to be in that, to even be considered for that. And he slid the list across to my desk and said, "I've checked all the boxes." And I said, "Well, Ben," I said, "I don't have any doubt you could run this company, but is the company ready for you to run it?" And so that began about a 6-month journey where we developed a plan to transition the leadership of the company to Ben, which took place in, I was trying to think, July of 2012, I think. Yeah, it's been 10 years. And so, but what that did then is that freed me up to start looking at what my higher calling was. And I had been involved through the Associated General Contractors with politics related to the contracting industry through things. And that had transitioned to a role at the Wichita Chamber of Commerce on their government relations committee, and eventually chair. And I was approached about considering filling a role of a senator that was contemplating, or it was speculated that he might resign. He decided not to, so that didn't come around. And then they said, they kind of asked if he doesn't run again, would you run for that office? And I said, sure. Well, he filed, and I thought I was off the hook until in 2012, if you remember, and we're going through it again, is redistricting, and the courts ended up doing that map And I got a phone call. They came out with the map on a Thursday, and I got a phone call that Thursday said that my House district had nobody in it, that they had kind of set the district where there was no incumbent, and would I run for it? And so we were out in Colorado. I called Mary on the phone and I said, got this opportunity. What do you think? And she says, well, she said, you've been praying about your higher calling. Maybe this is your higher calling you. and so I did it. And that began my journey in what I would call my public service season of life. And I was honored enough to be elected that year, and then 2 years later, reelected. And then I decided, just through some convictions that, it's too often people hang on too long. And I just decided that, there was I was becoming a little too cynical. Not a little too. I was becoming too cynical. I was becoming bitter on some political issues, and I just decided I didn't like myself anymore. So I quit. I didn't run for a third term, and settled back into what I thought was going to be more of a time where I could just focus on family stuff and other business ventures and stuff like that. And, about a year or two later, I just felt this real strong tug to throw my hat in the ring for governor. And I talk about the experiences. I still believe today that God called me to run for governor. He didn't call me to win.
Sure.
And there's a difference.
Yeah.
And it turned out that, that was his way to do some work in my life. And it was a tremendous, I loved running for governor. It was exhausting. And really, you get pulled through all sorts of knotholes. But at the end of the day, I came out of that experience a better person and a better perspective on Kansas and the state that has been so good to me. I really want to just emphasize that, without the support of all the communities in Kansas that have trusted and owners that have trusted Hutton Construction to build a building for them, I couldn't be sitting here today. And I'm I wake up thinking about that a lot. And so I want to give back to this community. And, it wasn't to be that I was going to be governor. But I was, again, turned around and blessed. I dropped out of that race, and then blessed that then Governor Collier asked me to serve on the Kansas Board of Regents. And so I'm wrapping up a 4-year term on that. And that has also been a tremendous experience and learning. You're drinking out of a fire hose with everything that you're trying to absorb and make decisions on. But I've been incredibly blessed by this season of service that I've been able to do because my son Ben could step in and kind of take the company and run with it, and I just haven't ever really worried about that. So it's a real blessing.
Yeah, and that
was a long story, wasn't it?
Well, that's great. And as I was thinking about, okay, what do I really want to talk about when I got Mr. Hutton in front of me? Yeah,
Mark. Call me Mark, please. Mr. Hutton was my dad.
All right, Mark. At least your name's easy to say.
There you
go. Anyways, I did want to talk about succession planning.
Sure.
A little bit, because that's an area that we do some work in. About half of my clients are entrepreneurs, and that's a big issue because really the day to have your succession plan figured out or transition plan is when you start the business, because anything can happen along the way. You may get an offer for the business if it's in good shape or disorganized shape, or something happens, unfortunate.
Yeah.
Disability, untimely death. Timely deaths are best, but usually they're untimely. But yeah, then what's going to happen? How are things going to go? And then also, how does a handoff happen? Like the wisdom. There's a joke about, hey, I was called into the boss's office, and he said, well, 3 years ago or 2 years ago, you joined the company and you went from sweeping the shop floors and quickly were the head of maintenance. And then after that, you tried your hand at sales and did really excellent there for 6 months. And then you became the sales manager. And today you're running the entire Western Division. And I think it's time to hand off the company to you.
Mm-hmm.
I said, thanks, Dad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So,
got you doing everything anyway.
yeah. But anyways, no, that's a lot of wisdom of just how you led Ben on, like, okay, here's what qualifications you need to check off before you're ready to do this.
Yeah.
And then is the company ready for it? Because there's too often where it's maybe rushed or whatever the case is, maybe it doesn't go well in some way, and it seems like it has. It's worked out just fine.
It has gone extremely well, and we get asked, Ben and I get asked all the time, how come? What made our transition so good? And I don't know that I can put my finger on any one thing. It was pretty obvious to me that Ben was going to be interested in the company. He was about 10, 11 years old when we started it. He was working out in the shop when he was 12, 13, sweeping it and working on maintaining, cleaning up equipment and stuff like that. And eventually moved into, a laborer in the field. And then he went to college. And I told him when he left for college, I said, if you want to come back to this company, you've got to go someplace else 3 years and work. And I got that idea from Jim Johnson, who had GE Johnson Construction, because his dad made him do that.
That's really smart.
And so Ben graduated from K-State, and he went out to Colorado Springs, and Jim Johnson hired him and gave him 3 wonderful years, knowing that, he wasn't going to stay there. But Jim really invested in Ben, and Ben came back with experiences that most kids 3 years out of school wouldn't have gotten. And so it just started him on a really good path. And then he started working his way through various aspects. He was project manager and then in charge of some sales and the like. But more than anything, I think, what the biggest success of our transition wasn't so much Ben's preparation as it was really a much as mine too. I mean, you have to understand when you transition to a family member, especially, that they aren't you.
Absolutely.
And they are not, and I think I see it all the time where a father passes a business or a parents pass a business on to a child and they expect that business to be run the way they did it. And that's just not a good plan. I mean, and the first thing I told Ben when, we handed this off, I said, this is yours. I said, I've got a lot of tremendous relationships I created with our insurance people, our bankers, our attorneys, that I said, they've bode very well for me. But for you need to find your own people. Don't feel like you got to use mine. And I made it clear to those accountants and all of that, they had to earn Ben's business. It wasn't a gimme. And I think it gave Ben a chance to start putting his fingerprint on the business much earlier. And I tell the story that, it was part of that transition and learning how to manage this company that prepared me for this, because I was about 10 years into it. We were growing like crazy. And I was just trying to be everybody in the company. I didn't have a CFO. I had people that kind of filled the roles, but I wasn't using them.
Yeah.
And so I decided one day I had to, let go so I could succeed. I told people I had to give the company up so that I could keep it. And I think I learned that lesson and then was able to carry that over to Ben. And it helped that, he had just a real sharp vision for what he wanted to do. He was I tell people all the time that he was the better person for the job than I was when he took it over.
Hmm.
And so it was, actually pretty darn easy for me to step back. And it was even easier because, about the time we handed it off to him, I took off for Topeka for about 3 months every year. And so that got me out of the way. And people, I wasn't in the office every day. So, Ben had a chance to kind of solidify his leadership pattern and did a great job and continues to do a great job as he's grown that, and so very proud of him.
Yeah, that's wonderful. But I think that speaks to not just Ben, but his upbringing. I mean, that certainly plays a role.
I give his mother all that credit.
Okay.
Literally, because look, my motto was I bid by night and built by day. And it was not uncommon for me to go to work at 6 o'clock in the morning and get home at midnight, 1 o'clock, and then turn around and do it again until I was so exhausted I just collapsed for a day. But when you're employee number 1 and your total employee count's 2, you don't have a lot of chances to pass things off.
Right.
And you do what you got to do. And if I had one regret is that I missed my boys' childhood. I was building them a future. I was convicted that what I was doing was going to better them and open up opportunities for them and my wife and everything. But
sure.
But I wished I could have been there more.
I get that.
And I think I call entrepreneur struggles with that. It's that balance. When you find somebody who has a really good balance between work and life and family and everything, I think to this generation, your generation has a better handle on that than my generation did. So, I watch young men like Ben and John Rolfe with Thrive and others. I start naming, but I'm just really always impressed with how they're diligent in carving out time for what's important. And I can't say I always did that.
What do you think makes a difference?
Well, I think, I have never really asked Ben this, but I bet you if you told him or asked him, he'd say, I don't want to be like my dad when it comes to that. And that's, I get that.
Sure.
I get that. So, I think it's a good, he learned from my mistake there.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that it's just a generational thing. I think some of it's probably personality, but there might be a generational component of maybe what you learned from your parents of you work hard, you work hard, you work hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you're tired, you work hard.
Well, and the interesting thing is there is I had to come to a realization that the hours I put in at work did not define my value to my employer. And for a long time, when I was working at another company, I was putting in 60, 80 hours a week doing that. And I won't tell a story, but there was kind of this epiphany that came along and that said, you're not defined by the hours you're working. You're defined by the product that you develop. And so that changed how I did things for a while. But I'll tell you, when I started the company, there was a lot more pressure to do get things done, and that took time. So it was a trade-off.
Well, I bet so. I guess I don't know what that looks like to start a general contracting firm as a sole employee.
Yeah.
I know when I started this, there was a lot of paperwork and a lot of paperwork, actually.
Yeah. And I'm not a paperwork guy.
I'm not either. That was torture.
So, that's, just another blessing in my life was I started Hutton about the time my father decided that he was going to retire, and he was in finance at Cessna. Mm-hmm. He financed people who wanted to buy citation jets through Cessna International Finance. And he did it all over the world. Tremendous background experience. My dad couldn't drive a nail if his life depended. He knew nothing or cared really nothing about construction.
Yeah.
But he was the most detailed record keeper and person. And he really, and I tell people all the time that this should have been Hutton and Dad Construction. Because he was so pivotal in kind of taking that burden off of me of, dealing with bank paperwork and insurance paperwork and all that stuff that just weighs you down when you're out there. You feel like I got to go out there and find a job, to do and build.
Yeah.
And so that freedom again, that blessing of freedom that he gave me really was pivotal in us being able to grow at the level we grew. And not to mention the fact that he chipped some money in at the beginning too that I didn't have, so that we could open the doors with more cash, than what we really needed, but it made a difference.
I'm sure it did.
Yeah, cash flow is what kills. He worked with me. We worked together on the business plan, and he helped me tweak that so that we didn't find ourselves one day not being able to make payroll. And that was another huge blessing that he provided for me.
Yeah.
Lost my dad 2 years ago, 94 years old. Just wonderful man.
Well, that's a good long life.
Yep. He was ready. He had his bags packed sitting out the front door.
And when he helped start the company, he didn't take ownership of it? Or
He did. He puts a significant amount of money in it. And then once it was about 2 years later, it was apparent we were actually going to make it. He gifted that stock to.
Oh, nice.
And before it had a bunch of value, and because he hated paying taxes and he'd rather just give it up. And so he gifted that tax to me, and he gifted some to my two sisters who I turned around a number of years later and bought out.
Yeah. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I like the saying, do your giving while you're living.
That's right. Yeah. Watch, we've tried to do that too. I don't know if you've read the book Splitting Heirs.
I haven't.
Yeah.
I need to, though.
It's a good book. It's about sharing your wealth with people so that at a time when you can watch them enjoy it and watch them prosper from it, whether it's to your children or to a not-for-profit or whatever. And also help direct it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So Mary and I have tried to follow that example as well.
The notion of just saving up until you're cold to the touch.
Now write a
I'm
check.
not really sure where that comes from.
They write a check for your bank balance and put it in your coffin.
Exactly. Yeah. See, that's a great plan right there.
Yeah. I don't know that. I mean, Mary and I at this point are focused on what we can leave, not what we have. And that's been, as we go through our investment decisions and what we do, it's, how are we going to influence people's lives after we're gone and make them better?
What is maybe like a difficult situation you went through that you had to grow through, or adversity shaped you, molded you, grew you for better?
Are you talking in my relationship with the transition in the company, or just overall?
In general.
In general?
So yeah, just kind of wide open.
Oh gosh, I got to pick one. Okay. Well, I would tell you the experience of running for governor was while in just really a great experience as it related to the people I got to meet all across this state. The vision that you kind of pull together through meeting those people with what could be, and the investment of your energy into that vision was a tremendous experience. The flip side of that was, to run for governor, you got to raise money.
Yeah.
And you got to ask everybody you meet, you got to ask for money. And I hated that. I had done enough of it when I was in the House, but it only took about $20,000 to run a campaign for the House of Representatives. I was being told it was 3 or 4 million just to get through the primary
Whoa.
of the governor deal. And part of that was because nobody knew or cared who Mark Hutton was. There were already two candidates in the race, Chris Kobach and Jeff Collier, that everybody knew. And so there was that, but there was also this this emotional tug of war that occurs as you do your best to paint a vision for people on what you would look like and do as a governor, but at the same time understanding that they, I don't want to say they don't care, but there's a reason that political television's commercials are in short little snippets, because that's what people latch on to. And I'm not a snippet kind of guy. I mean, I get into detail and the like, and there was this tension where I wanted to spend more time explaining myself, and my campaign people are going, "We got to keep moving," and so you don't have time to do that. And there's also an old adage in politics: if you're explaining, you're losing. And so it all came to a head between, the fundraising kind of fell off, my frustration with my ability to convey a message. And the harder I worked at that, the worse I got. I mean, it was just this mind block that I had with that. And then just the exhaustion that went through nonstop. And I thought after, all the years I spent, working long hours at the company and everything, that I was prepared. It's a different exhaustion than just working, and because you're constantly pouring yourself out to people. And so all that came to a head in March, and it just became obvious that I was told that, if we wanted to compete, we'd have to put $2 million of our own money in the campaign, and decided that, if I'm putting $2 million in something, it wasn't going to be a political campaign. It would be, Youth Horizons or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so we made the hard decision that, the reality was we just weren't going to get there. And more importantly, we were going to prevent the better candidate from possibly getting elected, get through the primary. So we decided we would step out of that and pass what few votes that we had garnered on to Jeff Collier. And unfortunately, Jeff didn't quite get there, but another great guy that I have the greatest respect for is Jeff. You talk about somebody who just gives with no barriers. I mean, that guy is amazing, and most people don't have a clue how much what he does for this world. So anyway, that's kind of that decision to step out of the governor's race still haunts me. And it's because so many people had given me money and trusted me with that to go be governor. And to step back, I just felt like, and still to this day, feel like that was, by far and away the biggest failure of my life. And so, I know I shouldn't look at it that way. And all the people that supported me have been so gracious, saying, don't worry about it and everything. But you just can't help. You get so invested in those relationships and the trust that they demonstrate by giving you their financial resources. And to not get there was really hard.
Yeah. Man, it can be hard to forgive ourselves. Can it?
I think so. Yeah. I'm my worst critic, and that's okay. I mean, that's how I was brought up. We talked a little bit about parents. Mm-hmm. My dad was a World War II vet, and it was about hard work every day. And he taught me that the one of the biggest honors you can have in life is to shake the the calloused hand of a worker. And just stuff like that he conveyed. But it was our family, growing up, we never really went on a vacation because we didn't want to spend the money. And my dad was very frugal, but it was because he was frugal, he was able to help me start the company.
Yeah.
So, I remember as a kid feeling cheated because my mom and dad wouldn't buy the same cool stuff that my friends had. But, later on down the road, I could see the wisdom. Came full circle.
How much better to appreciate the long-term cycle of wisdom than feeling like you got everything you wanted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wonderful. What would be maybe to go back a little further earlier on in your business career, back, I don't know, somewhere between 38 or sooner if you want, what would maybe was a challenge in business that you overcame, or that was maybe had some complex facets to it, or you just, once you got into it, you're like, I have no idea how to fix this problem?
Well, one of towards the, a couple years before I started Hutton, I had the opportunity working for another company to start a subsidiary of that company, another little construction company. And so I told people this Hutton was really the second company I got to start. I just got to start the first one on somebody else's wallet, and learned a lot through that. I mean, they had a bunch of stuff in place that I was able to tag on to, but I had a Jim Rasmussen was an estimating manager at another company. And when I took this job, I talked to Jim and I said, what kind of advice do you have on this? He said, just break every problem down to the point that you can get a handle on each issue. Don't look at it as one big global problem. Break it down into parts that you can kind of grasp and feel like you can start dealing with. And that was just really good advice. I mean, I do that constantly in my life. And, I now, and, I've got a challenge. Until I just keep kind of winnowing it down to a point that I said, okay, I know how to fix that. And then that leads me to how to fix the next thing. And next thing you know, you've kind of solved it. Or it's taken so long, it's gone away. I don't. But
that is an interesting comment too.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just need to wait it out.
Well, that's the other thing is I think by drilling down, you might learn that, it's not that big a deal. And maybe it's not worth your energy to throw into it. And so I learned through that. I mean, that was a great value. And then I applied that. I had a project I was handed. It started, it was really bad job. The owner's relationship was terrible. It was in Georgia, and it was a prison. I took a year and 3 months working on this prison. I took it from about 25% complete to 98%. And there's some stories behind that. But I tell people, it took about a year and 3 months to do that. And I tell people I served a year and 3 months at Dooley Correctional Institute. Because it was a miserable job. And it was partly because the owner was not interested in a relationship where it was about mutual trust. And to them, it was all a zero-sum game. This would be the state of Georgia.
Like if they win, you lose. If you
That's
win,
right.
they lose.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And so I spent the better part of my time just managing that relationship, and other people actually managing the construction. But just managing the relationships around all that taught me a lot about the importance of picking your owners well. And there's been projects throughout the years that have been offered to Hutton Construction that I've turned down because I didn't think it was a good fit. And it was that experience that I gained, understanding that you want, owners, they're the customer, absolutely, but they're also in some aspect a business partner. And likewise with them for you. We today, we work really hard to bring value to our owners beyond the buildings that we build them. I think that's, it's all about building that relationship. And I'm proud to say I've got a ton of friends today that friendship started when I built them a building. And that was always kind of one of my benchmarks. I come out of this, and as we got bigger, that got harder because I just didn't get a chance to meet everybody. And so today it's Ben's problem to kind of make sure those relationships are at that level. And I think he's doing a good job.
What business advice would you pass on to entrepreneurs or maybe somebody that's considering starting their own business?
Yeah. Well, look, one of the keys to our success was I didn't know what I didn't know, and I think most business startups will tell you that and you just can't worry about it. It's back to the one problem at a time. You get up every day, you go tackle what's in front of you and what you need to do to live that day and fight on. And the next thing you know, you've got some momentum and you can handle those issues a little easier and on to other issues. But it's always, I still break my day down into day-to-day parts and how if I've got a problem, how am I going to solve that day? And so I just encourage people. You got to be willing to wear any hat that you need to wear. And frankly, when it's time to grow, you've got to keep the hats you hate because it's it's the hats that you hate are the ones that'll bite you if you don't pay attention to them. I've coached a lot of subcontractors over the years on how they wanted to grow. And the first thing, they're making that transition from bid by night, build by day, just like I was. And they're saying, I got to hire somebody. And I said, well, who do you want to hire? Well, I'm going to hire an estimator. Why? I hate estimating. That's not a reason to hire an estimator.
Okay.
An estimator can kill you really fast. I'd say, you need to keep the estimating and go hire a good project manager for two reasons. One, project managers are easier to find than an estimator. And two, a project manager can't lose you money near as fast as an estimator.
Right.
A bad estimator can. And so, and I can't tell you how many times they went out and hired an estimator and got into trouble. They didn't listen to me. But so you have to be willing to do the ugly stuff and do it well, because that's the stuff that generally is going to be the stumbling points for you.
Yeah, I don't know that my dad does it nearly as much, but I remember when I was young, he would bring estimating home, and he worked at a few different GCs around town.
Did he? Okay.
And yeah, but I remember, there'd be times he was so proud of himself that he's, and he should be.
Absolutely.
Because he was able to save a lot of money by thinking of something creatively on how to put it together differently.
Exactly right. So he was awarded the project because of his ingenuity.
Yeah.
I loved estimating for that reason, is it gave you a chance to be creative within guardrails, of course, but
Sure.
But it's and that's what I like about construction, is the problem solving that goes into that, and being able to drive around and see shadows cast by what you do, other than file boxes of paper.
Yeah, that is neat, and that is a really cool. The legacy side of it's really neat.
Yeah.
Like out in Goddard, my dad was the project manager on Eisenhower High School.
Oh yeah.
But I think so. He was a Goddard grad, I was a Goddard grad, and my grandpa, I think, was a Goddard grad as well.
Yeah.
And So just kind of a fun legacy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sounds like you take the keep it simple approach and work hard one day at a time,
Yep.
one problem at a time, break it down.
Yeah. Don't go elephant hunting.
Uh-huh.
You just stay in your lane on project sizes. If you're construction or whatever you do, don't go out and try to knock an elephant down when you're not ready to eat it,
Sure.
because it'll kill you.
Mm.
And you're much better off. I used to tell our guys, I'd rather have 10 $1 million jobs than one $10 million job,
Hmm.
because they're frankly, your risk is lower, your profitability is generally higher, and the overall management of them make you better.
Well, and that's, it's kind of sexy to look at the $10 million job and be like,
Well, yeah,
look at what we did.
Absolutely. You want, we're to a point in our company where we can take on larger projects
Sure.
and use them to anchor
Uh-huh.
kind of what we do. But at the same time, you have to look at them as, that's concentrated risk. And we're in the risk management business.
Mm-hmm.
And really any business is, you manage your risk of failure against your profits. And
Yeah.
you have to keep that in mind and not get seduced by getting bigger or different, growing your footprint or whatever. All those things are kind of gee whiz cool, but they come with risk.
So value growth advising is something we do.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things about business value is 2/3 of it can be established in risk management.
Mm-hmm.
Because it comes down on the fundamental value side of things. It all comes down to discounted cash flows.
Yep.
And if your company risk is through the roof, even though you might be profitable one year, you might be out of business the next.
That's right.
And so your point on risk management of business owners is way more true than we'd probably like to acknowledge. Going back to we didn't know what we didn't know.
Yep.
I think most businesses probably wouldn't start if everybody
absolutely.
realized what was ahead of them.
So I tell the
to get
story,
there.
about 2 weeks before I pulled the trigger and gave my notice where I was at to start
Mhm.
Hutton Construction. I made the mistake of opening up the yellow pages, and a lot of, your generation doesn't even know what the yellow pages is, but it was the phone book. And I looked up all the general contractors, and I looked down that list, and it went on for pages. And I'm going, how on earth am I going to compete against all of these people? And I knew some of them. They're great companies, still are great companies that we compete against every day. And it was kind of a tough moment. I had to push through and say, well, I can. I've done it in other instances, and I can do this. And so we went ahead and, I went ahead and pulled the trigger. But that was I remember that evening vivid. I don't know why I did that. I just decided I was going to see what was out there. And it was kind of back to, I'd been better off knowing what I didn't know, not knowing what I knew then.
Yeah. And really I think that's a form of God's provision and protection, because it's kind of like, if you don't realize you're going to find yourself in a lion's den, or whatever the case is.
And part of that was
we'll just lose our minds.
Yeah. There was a transition in my leadership mindset that took us from worrying about what our competition was doing. I finally decided, you know what? I'm going to let them worry about me, and I'm going to stop worrying about them. And I'm not going to, when I bid a project, I'm going to bid it based on what I know I can do it for, and not what I think the other company's going to bid it at, because that gets you in trouble too. And so that was a lesson that I learned that I think really paid off for me. That we just decided we're not going to be beholden to our competition. We're going to just get out ahead of them if we can, and stay out ahead of them.
It's good awareness. One of the biggest mistakes businesses can make is how you compete, and not recognizing if you're competing on maybe a high end customer service, maybe manufacturing excellence or competence, or straight out low cost.
Yeah.
So it's you can't. It would be very difficult to compete on low cost in a startup, surely.
Absolutely. Well, but in some aspects, you're forced to do that because when we first started up, our only avenue for job procurement really was the bid market, the hard bid market, which was much more prevalent, 30 years ago than it is today. There's a lot more different types of project delivery methods that are, I think, much better for the industry and for the customer. But back then it was, you bid the projects and we bid schools because if you could show you had a certain financial worth, and they let you bid it. And so we that's where we got our start, is in bidding small projects. And then it wasn't too long after that some opportunities came along to negotiate some projects, and that created relationships that are still strong today. So lots of opportunity.
Any other thoughts you want to share? Any other wisdom you want to impart today?
No, I mean, gosh, I appreciate the opportunity. I enjoy telling our story because it's one of grace and blessings and the like. And it's our hope, our being Mary and I, that as we navigate our final turn, and straight away, that people will see God's grace in our lives, and that will inspire them to pursue where they think God's calling them.
Not so key. It's the key.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yep. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Mark, for taking some time out of your busy retirement day to come in and share. And I'm sure that many people will learn some things from you.
Well, it's been an honor to be here. I appreciate being asked. Really do.
All right. Well, that does it for the Real Wealth Podcast featuring Mark Hutton and his story of Hutton Construction and transition with Ben, sponsored by Leading Edge Financial Planning, where we help people make wise financial decisions.